Hi, everybody. Annyeonghaseyo. So tonight we're doing part two of chapter 10, formal testing. Since there's no separate chapter on key testing, I figured it'd be a good idea to cover it as part two, a second part, just because it is a very important part of our training in Aikido. So I'm going to start by just reading the Shokushu, which I'm sure everyone knows was added. Like when I first started Aikido, this particular Shokushu was not yet written and came later. And it's called The Treasure of Key Testing. Having no color, no odor, and no shape, the mind is not something that can be grasped by the senses. However, based on the principle that the mind and body are actually one, we can know the state of this ungraspable mind by testing the body, which is available to our senses. Key tests are not founded on the idea of testing for strength or weakness. The most important factor in key testing is to accurately inform the person of the state of his or her mind. Thus, the person performing key tests must truly understand and exhibit oneness of mind and body from the outset and then perform the tests correctly. So many of you may not know, but I can let you know that, Curtis Sensei went through and did all of the shochus, and they're on his website, which we will soon be updating. And he covered this back in, I believe it was 2014 or 15. And he gave a little lecture on it, of course. And I'll read you a section from the discussion group that he held at the dojo. It says, if we are doing a Shodan key test, let's say a formal key test, the student is expected to have a certain level of participation in mind and body unification, which we call Shodan level. So the person who is testing must understand what that level is that is required and perform accordingly, testing to that level. And you know that the way you change testing levels is not by doing something with your body, but your degree of calmness. In other words, your own participation increases in calm intensity as the test becomes higher. So in this case, it is either a yes or no. You either are on this level or not. And usually, if you don't pass, you get another chance. The teacher touches you and puts calmness and gives you confidence, and then your participation can be a little bit greater, hopefully enough to pass the Shodan key test, and so on and so on. Shodan, Chudan, Jodan, and Okudan. So these a lot of people when they first start Aikido, they have no concept of key testing, especially when we get transplants from other Aikido styles. And they're used to the Q and Dan ranking system, where Toy Sensei, when he developed key testing, he had the not only the Q, the Shokyu, Chukyu, Jokyu, but he also did what they call Den testing, Den. And Den testing is basically a very old style of Japanese licensing for martial arts, or what they call it is Budo, forms of Budo. Back before um, Dr. Kano, who was the founder of Judo, he's the original person who kind of founded the Dan system and the belt system back in the I believe it's 19, early 1900s, right around 1920 when Judo was first featured as an Olympic sport. So the Den level dates way back before that. And I researched, I got a little stuff off the internet, of course, and it defined what the different Den levels are. And it's pretty applicable to what we see here. Shoden is the beginning level. Sho means beginning, of course, what we've discussed before. It's the beginning level of transmission. In it, the student learns the basic movements, techniques of the school. It can be seen as a solid foundation on which stronger technique is built. The next one, Chudan. Chudan is the intermediate level of the transmission. During this step, in this case, they're talking about swordsmanship. Swordsman's education, he has to master all intermediate techniques, become proficient and knowledgeable in the philosophy and history of the school. And then the next one they have in this, there was no Jodan back in the day. It was basically Shodan, Chudan, and Okudan. Um, a long time ago. So Okudan is the what they call the inner or master level of transmission, and the highest and most secret teachings and techniques are transmitted in this level. After fully mastering it, the student receives what they call a Menkyo Kaiden scroll, which is a license of full mastery of the school. So you can look at that and say, okay, well, Chudan is intermediate, Jodan is more advanced. And then Okudan, which is what they call, back in the day when O Sensei, before he started Aikido, he studied Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, and he received the Menkyo Kaiden certificate. And that is what, Toy Sensei, if you ever know, you'll see, there's Shodan, Chudan, Jodan, Okudan, and Kaiden, which nobody has. But Kaiden means the license of total transmission. And that's basically you've completely mastered and initiate into the art as a disciple. And now the discipline is a part of you as a person. And it's a license used by the schools, meaning the student has learned everything that can be passed on in all aspects of the training. So you can see why we don't really have that in key testing. We have just Shodan, Chudan, Jodan, and Okudan. So that being said, um, I like to think of this as, we're continuing our discussion in testing, and basically, what I read prior to what Curtis Sensei had talked about is the participation, and that participation it really comes down to option A, option B, option C. And it's perfectly displayed, personally, I think, in a key test where you get, initially when you get a very brand new beginner, and what do? You test them, right? Standing posture, touch, and test. Show cue basic, right? What does the beginner usually do? Resist, pushes back, right? That's option A, right? And then you'll get some people who do option B, which is you test and they just fall back. They're like, what? And they don't know. They just collapse. And then not till you really teach them option C by, okay, let touch, connect with the person, they connect to you, and then test. Then that's the initial of, oh, this is what option C is. Okay, I'm not fighting, I'm not collapsing, I'm just connecting. So I thought that was, I thought it would be important to not just rehash this, because this is like the foundation, of our teaching is this simple option A, option B, option C, which, Curtis Sensei basically he's I think came up with that terminology option A, B, and C. But going back, if you look at the four principles, that's basically what it's transmitting. Four principles. Keep on point, relax completely, keep weight underside, and extend key. Extending key is just another way of saying connect. Don't fight. So, with that, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this matter. What do you think? How is key testing for you? I think John would like to talk because he's really into learning about option A, B, and C.
It's okay. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Um, I actually have a very difficult time doing key testing, um, because it's hard for me to experience when I'm doing the test. I'm just so up in my head, and I'm supposed to experience the feeling, and all I'm thinking about is pushing the person over.
Oh,
Because I feel like if I do it correctly, that's how it's supposed to be. It's basically push them over. But
right.
I mean, that's like deeper inside of me. That feels what it is. And I mean, when I'm doing a test on someone who's a beginner or someone, I'm definitely trying to touch and feel, but I'm not sure if I'm feeling what I'm feeling or experiencing that sense of calmness in myself and the sense of support for that other person. So I'm still learning.
Yeah, of course. And, you know, what you're experiencing is everybody's experienced that. In
Right.
fact, Curtis Sensei tells a story about, Curtis Sensei was one of the very first people to receive the Okudan key test. Okudan was normally by recommendation. You just got a recommendation rank, and then you got the Okudan. So Toy Sensei said, we really have to develop a test for this. I'm going to develop a test. And at that point, he was kind of Toy Sensei was training Otsuka Sensei to give these tests on different level of calmness. But since there had been no Okujin test ever really given, they decided to do it, with Curtis Sensei, and I believe there was a few others involved, and they did it at a World Camp. And of course, you know, the very first time, he goes up and they do standing, right? So he walks out in front, and Otsuka Sensei was wearing reading glasses, and he went, and then went up and pushed him over, and then Toy Sensei went, no, 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 that's wrong. You didn't connect with him, and and this is in front of the whole. He's giving Otsuka Sensei lessons on how to do a proper Okudan key test because it was level of calmness. And I think Otsuka Sensei, he doesn't speak English, but I think later on, through a translator, he might have told Curtis Sensei that, at that point, it was like, if I pushed too soft, I was being too easy. And if I pushed too hard, but see, that goes back to thinking of the test as a physical thing and not a connection thing. So, like you said, when you do testing with beginners, you don't think so much about physically testing them. You're wanting to transmit the experience. So, how do you do that? You touch first, wait for their 1 point to come down, and then you give them that experience. So you have to, when testing like that, that's how you're doing it all the time. It's no different like the sudden, the next level key test, the Chukyu key test, where you just test. There's no getting ready, so to speak. And for people who are just getting experiencing key testing, that's like, whoa, that's like he jumped out behind a rock and tried to scare him. And the person got scared, and of course, when people get scared, their weight comes up their side, and it's easy to come over. But what you want to do, that test, is just more like saying, hey, hi. When you say hi to somebody, you just say hi. And I think of more of the Shokyu key test when you walk out and you walk up to somebody. I always think of that test in my mind when Sensei's coming up to test me. I think of it, he's coming to shake my hand. And when you shake somebody's hand, that's a really good experience most of the time. You want to meet them. Your key is out. It's a physical connection. So even though you're not shaking their hand on that kind of a test, you have that experience in your mind body. And I think that makes all the difference in the world when going through those different levels of key tests. You think of it as a, wow, this is a chance. This is a chance I get to experience this with my teacher or whoever I'm with. Like when we break up, and I remember being super intimidated when I first got here, and I'm pairing up with people who are, I think I was Nidan when I got here, and I'm paired up with Joni and Melly and all these high ranking people. And I'm thinking, I'm going to key test them. what am I gonna, but it wasn't. It was again not what we're doing. It's what we're doing is having an experience together, having a moment of connection, and that's what we want to transmit. So, John, you're not the first person, nor will you be the last. I'm confident of that. What else? Who else? What do you think, Gloria?
Well, about 1,000 times in my studying with Nalwai Sensei, he would say, touch softly, then test. And then he would come up and he'd take our hand, he'd go, no, 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 no. And place it over and over and over again. And one day, there was a guy who hadn't been there in a long time and hasn't been back after 2 or 3 times. But I was going to test him. And when I raised my hand, I thought, oh, wait, I'm ready to test. So touch softly, then test. And then I touched softly, moved my hand, and he moved back and looked very surprised. So the testing part, I think, is a little easier for me taking it than it is giving it, because where I get, I really wonder whether I'm doing it right is when we use the different levels of testing. How do I know what is the level at which I should test when it's difficult for anybody to transmit that? He says, this is the way you test this one, but it's kind of like, let's see, I'm looking and I'm not sure what I see. And how do you explain that to somebody?
Yeah, that's a good question, and very difficult. I know what you're saying there is, of course, the different levels. It's very mapped out in the Shokyu Jokyu level, yeah, Shokyu Chukyu Jokyu level. Very very mapped out. Touch and test, and then just test, and then the Jokyu where you walk out. But then when you get to the Den levels, Shodan, Chudan, Jodan, etc., then that's a whole different ball game, and there you really have to, I like to say the terminology, dig deep. You have to really be calm and really trust your calmness. And I think people don't trust themselves enough, and when they don't trust themselves, they literally don't trust their calmness. They're still, oh my god, how they're thinking mechanically. Meaning, like John said, oh, I'm always up in my head, and I'm thinking about this so much. But do you, to translate this to an everyday thing, shaking somebody's hand, having a conversation with somebody, do you, if you're nervous, of course, like if you're on a first date and you're like really nervous and there's that, but then if your old friend that you've known since way back, you're just connected, and things just happen naturally. And that's the kind of relationship you have with your students and fellow members, that kind to really transmit a key test on a deeper level, in my opinion. I'm just telling you from my experience. When I key test Fincher or Sayaka or somebody, I have a relationship with them already, a friendship, and I can really test them honestly. Where if I'm paired up with a seminar with somebody I don't know, I'm gonna really have to completely connect and be completely focused on mind, body, where I can't rely on my past relationships of knowing them. Hey, I'm just knowing them. Let's just test here, and we test. Where if you're at a seminar setting or or giving a formal test, and I'm sure Curtis Sensei could talk a lot about this when he went to Europe and tested people for the very first time. I saw several tests in Europe when I was there. I've been there a couple times, and it's a totally different experience than you'd see at a Hawaii Key Federation seminar, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe Fincher can relate on what he's seen, but I see it totally different when you're in Europe and the atmosphere is really super intense versus Hawaii. And it might be a Hawaii thing, thinking about it. I'm not sure. I'd have to mull that over a little bit. I'm not really analyzed the differences, but there is a difference, I think. And I think Curtis Sensei, and I think a lot of it has to do in Europe. The people are really hungry in a sense for learning versus, and I noticed that here in Hawaii, I think, and especially in Maui, people tend to get a little comfortable with, oh, it's just this, oh, it's one of those. We see him 4 times a year or 5 times a year, or people on Maui would see sensei, 3 times a week or twice a week, and it gives you a different experience. That's just my thoughts on that. But yeah, trusting yourself, connecting with a person. There's nothing more than, I mean, that's the most important. Option C, A, B, and C. You just got to go with option C when you're testing. And that's the hardest thing. That's why we practice key testing really a lot. It's not so much for the person taking the test, it's for the person giving the test, because that's the hardest part. Like Laura, you said, like having to touch the person, that person going, no, 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 relax your hand, because people are like, very stiff. When they're testing the person, they have to really relax and connect with the person. Like, shake hands with a stiff hand. Think about it. I mean, we start all the seminars with Shinichi Sensei and shaking hands. Just think of how you touch somebody's hand softly. That's how you want to key test so softly. You can see you put those together now. Before you do, oh, we're just shaking hands again. No, actually, you're practicing how to key test. So
Then we're
Fisher, what do you
allowed to
think?
touch each other again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hopefully someday. What do you think, Fincher? What do you think about the different types of? Did you notice a difference when you were in Europe on testing versus here on the islands?
I don't know. Well, good evening, first of all.
Yeah.
I don't know if I did, other than I think that when I first went there, I did notice a lot of less presumption on the students, of having been tested by Curtis Sensei many times and then wanting to pass the test. And maybe that was the only thing I might say, is that it didn't seem like they were conceptually wanting to pass the test. They were just connecting. I don't know, but that is one thing that I do like as you're describing it. I think they should change the name from key testing. I think testing should be completely eliminated, and it should be like what you were saying, a key connection. We're going to make key connection here, because the one thing that's going to change your perspective is if you're passing a test. I mean, that's a fail right there. because it's a mindset. I'm going to pass an opponent, and Sensei talks about this quite a bit, but we still call it key testing. And so it really does lead into passing something. And unless you're really watching yourself, or you're really monitoring that reflex reaction to wanting to pass the test, then you're entering into it mistakenly. Where when I teach my beginners class, I sort of start off saying, don't worry whether you get, it moved or not. That's not the issue, really. The issue is, can you see why you're moved? And when you're taught something, can you see why you're more stable? But I noticed that when you give someone a test and they fail, you let go of your 1 point comes up right away. Like you might be being moved, but once you have accepted that you've failed, and you get discouraged, you're even less stable. That's the one thing I think is really interesting, is where the mind is during this process. Of course, that's part of it. Is the test is to show you where your mind is, and so these are the things that you get to understand um, as you're connecting, can you just connect as the sensei comes up? Like you said, shaking hands. That's a wonderful perspective, because that, whether you're moved or not, the most important thing is that you're connecting with what happens. You're present with what happens, and just feel that movement. And that's the hardest thing to do, really, as a student, I think.
Oh yeah, I agree. I probably took well, I won't say it was the worst Shodan test ever, but it was right up there. That's probably one of the worst. I was in Oregon, Portland, Oregon, and Shinichi Sensei was giving tests for the first time outside of Japan. And of course, I was not. I was living in Arizona at the time, and I think, oh, what was it? I just made Shodan. I just made Shodan. In Arizona, you took your Joe Q at first Q, where a lot of people take their Joe Q either at brown belt or Shodan. Well, in Arizona, we took it at first Q, and then immediately after that, I mean, it was within, I think, 2 or 3 years. I was then, because we had a mandatory 2 year 2 years between Joe Q and Shodan in Arizona. So after 2 years, I took my Shodan test, and then right after that was a seminar in Oregon, and Fowler Sensei said, "Oh, I want you to take Shodan key test in Portland." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, Sensei." I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't really even prepare. I just went up there, and it was like, I would say there was probably close to 30 people testing, all the way from Shodan to Chudan, and maybe even a few Jodan people. And I think myself and another person, Pat Olstead, was there from Arizona, and there was a bunch of higher ranking people there. And there was another person from another country. I won't say that country's name because you might know who he is. And I got tested, and I was a nervous wreck the whole time. I mean, I just remember during the seminar going to Curtis Sensei and Shiner Sensei going, I don't know, I can't even pass Curtis. At that time, I couldn't even pass his Chukyu test, and I'm going for Shodan, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not gonna do well here. And finally, I said, "Oh, I'll go to Shiner Sensei, and he'll give me some, And he of course tried to boost me up as much as he can, but it wasn't very much, I tell you. And I go there in front of everybody, and I think I maybe have been the fourth person in line being tested, and it was like, standing posture, fail. Okay, puts me in posture, test, he's good. The next one, fail. Okay, next one, he's good. And it's like the first three, I just fail, fail, fail. Then I got a rhythm and did somewhat okay. However, probably if you were really doing the triangle thing, I probably wouldn't have passed. But it was Shinichi's first deal, and then I noticed that a couple down the rows down, there was another person who literally failed every one of them the first time, and he had to get corrected the next one. And I was like, oh wow, at least I didn't do that bad. I'm thinking to myself, but I said I still didn't pass. And then I remember they didn't even announce. Usually at the end of the test, everyone applauds and goes, "You all passed, right?" Oh no. Shinichi Sensei just went, "The results will be posted tomorrow." Or later on. Your teacher will come to you and tell you. And I remember they had a big meeting, I think, up after the test with Shinichi Sensei and all the chief instructors, what have you. And I have no idea what was said, but I passed suddenly for some odd reason. I have no idea why, but I passed. But that was in the beginning. That was in the early years, So I will say the early years, but the early years of key testing and Shinichi Sensei coming and finding his own rhythm of testing and how he wanted to portray it and so on and so forth. But it was an experience I'll never forget, of being absolutely miserable, not happy at all with my test at all. Zero. I was embarrassed. In fact, somebody came up after me and said, "Wow, you were so serious during the test. Your eyes did not move. You didn't even smile." And I was thinking to myself, yeah, I was petrified. I was scared to death. Where the guy who did really well was like right next to me, and he was smiling and having a good time. And just, I think he was from St. Louis or something. And I looked over at him and went, man, he's really extending key well. What is wrong with me? I don't know. It was very funny. But that was my experience for my Shodan key test. It was not a good test. Anyways, what about you, Paiva Sensei? Have you had good experiences with your key testing? Giving or receiving?
Okay. So, boy, you just covered such a range of subjects there. You know, I first want to say I'm really glad that when Tohei Sensei started, asked Curtis Sensei to start the Hawaii Key Federation, get it going and everybody together again. It was amazing because there were so many differences in how everybody tested. You go to one place and testing was different. And now you understand that even if maybe you're having a little difficulty in something, that we're all supposed to be doing the same thing. I mean, I remember Curtis Sensei, he'd go, okay, I'll let you guys test. And then he'd look at everybody and go, why is your elbows all up? Everybody's testing like this, So it's been wonderful that when you go from seminar to seminar, there is that continuity and everything's the same. It's supposed to be the same, and it is. And the funniest thing to me is back when I was going as a brown belt to train with Takashi Nonaka Sensei in Hilo on Sundays, on the Sunday morning class, I didn't even know what the rankings were for key back then. And I don't know if you remember Gladys, but she was the little Spitfire in the Hilo Club that was just a Spitfire. That's all I can say. And Nonaka Sensei said, somebody needs to come up here who Shodan, key level. And Gladys shoves me. She goes, oh, Lillian, you must be Shodan. I said, oh, if you say so. Of course I wasn't. I was Chukyu. So I got up then and goes, okay, so you're Shodan. I went, yeah. So because I just figured whatever he wanted, I was it, I passed everything he was doing. And then later I went, oh, wait a minute. No. And then I couldn't pass anything. So it just tells you the mindset. And with my students, I think my Shodan test, which I shouldn't have a preference, was my favorite key test. And it's only been, a couple of years now since we did it, key test on at Lokahi. And it was amazing because that weekend, a couple of times I went, oh, I'm testing tomorrow. Oh, well, so what? And when I got up and my name was called and I bowed in and I stood there and Curtis Sensei was standing there, I could just feel this wonderful love coming from him. And as soon as I felt that, I could feel the love of everybody in the room, almost individually, but also all together. And that taught me so much in that moment about, instead of worrying about testing my students, just make sure that they're feeling that love and that connection. So that key test hopefully made me a much better instructor. And I have to say, it was just an amazing experience. So, yeah, I don't know what else to add. But
no, yeah, I get that because so many times you see people tasked to try to push somebody over. You just want to push them over, and I think that's where we had to come from. When we started, everyone was like, "Oh, it's about learning. Everyone's gonna, I'm gonna bust somebody's chops, and then they'll pass." And there were so many different styles of key tests. Oh, I remember when people would touch and go, "Oh, yes, that's it," and they collapse their arm, and it was just this big dramatic thing, and I was just like, it made it to me come across as so fake, and I didn't like it in the beginning because there was no standard it was zero standard. And that's what I have to say. I agree with you 100%. Was when, Curtis Sensei really got the standard down perfectly. And that's what he's transmitting. And that's something that's really a good foundation to have. You have a good, and I've been to Japan where, I get stuck in the, I say stuck. I'm fortunate enough to be in the instructor group. Uh, and we're testing and key testing, and I have to say I learn a lot just in that group of instructors on how to test, and what to test for and what to look for, what Shinichi Sensei is really looking for, and that's very beneficial in a sense, to get that kind of training. I think it's really good. So, Murta, what do you think of this topic there, key testing? I know it's early in the morning. It's probably pretty chilly there too.
I have my window open and it's supposed to be about 12 minus Celsius. So, but I'm cozy. I'm cozy, all right. Good evening, everyone. This is a very interesting topic for me because I had the same experience as the people I heard before, that I basically want to push people over and I get very competitive testing. And so those are the moments when I realize I really don't understand what I'm doing. But the experience of Paiva Sensei, of just feeling the love and making sure people feel you care, that's very, very helpful. So thank you very much for sharing that. And also thank you very much for sharing the very recognizable experiences of okay, we all don't know what we're doing a lot of the time, and that's the way of learning it. So just keep on trying and be open. So I enjoy this very, very much. Yeah, please keep on sharing. I'm here and listening. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Welcome. It's really nice to hear. Thanks for coming. Um, Sasaki Sensei, we're talking about key testing tonight. I know you came in a little bit after the subject, but that I read the Shokushu key testing. And do you have any key testing stories you'd like to share, or your experience with key testing? She's frozen.
Oh
Oh,
boy,
you're there.
sorry.
You're there.
My
No
screen
problem.
was frozen. I couldn't.
We can hear you now.
So
You're
who's up?
good. You're up.
Okay. Experience being tested? So much.
Being tested, giving tested. What's your experience with key testing?
Well, I started a long time ago, so yeah, there was a lot of that pushing. So what was interesting is when I took my Shodan, there were three of us, and if there was anything that was so classic, it was basically small, medium, and large. So there was David Kimura, Don Inoki, and myself. And I remembered one test where it's raising both hands up. Remember that one?
Hmm?
And it was so funny because all three of us failed. It didn't matter how big you were, the bulk you had. All three of us failed that one. But it was still pushing. But I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought surely David Kimura would pass, but we all failed that. So even if there was pushing, in those days it was pretty much an even ground, I think. then progressed to the more recent ones. I was stuck in that instructor's class. And I remember Shinichi Tohei sensei trying to tell me, the feeling of the touch. So he said, test me. So I touched him. He goes, too hard. And I went, what? So I tried again. And he said, too hard. And I'm thinking, wait. Okay, touch. He goes, no, too hard. And he goes, let me show you. And it was like, did he touch me?
Right.
you know. But yeah, he's touched you because you kind of like went backwards. So it's like, oh man, it's such a long way to go to get just that training on how to touch. And I was just wondering, after Lillian had said about the love and extension, maybe part of it is that, I'm just thinking touch. So I'm still working on it.
Of course, yes, we all are, for sure. But yeah, I get it. The levels change. Were you at the seminar when they had the one they had in Oahu when Toy Sensei came and was having people go through the key testing, and he wasn't happy with how people were being tested and how the tests were going?
I think I was there, yeah. That was
Yeah,
at Tabata Sensei's dojo?
I believe so,
Or,
yes.
yeah.
I was not personally at that seminar, but I heard lots of stories because that's, I think that was kind of a turning point when Toy Sensei was not satisfied with how people were testing because people were pushing. And he really wanted to bring the level up to, hey, folks, this is what we're doing here. This isn't a physical test. This is a test of the mind. This is how you have to test people's stability by connecting instead of just making it a competition, right? I mean, we tend to turn everything into a competition. So, yeah, I get that a lot. So, Vitali or Kiyomi, would you like to have a chat there, Vitali?
Hello, Sensei. Hello, everyone. I have some experience with kit testing, and I have many difficulties with them. First of all, when I receive test, I want to pass it. I understand that test is not for passing it. It's for checking myself, checking mind and body unification, calmness, and so on and so on. But anyway, I always want to pass the test, and it's a problem.
Yes, and you are not the only one.
The problem when I giving the test. When I giving the test, I want to send to provide some information for the person being tested. And if that person is beginner, I tested them, and I see that his mind and body is not united. I want to show him, please do something with your mind and body, change something. But if a person is quite big and strong, I cannot provide him this information. If a person is not beginner, it's understand. I touch him or her, and it's understand. Yes, I should change this. But if he or she is beginner, they say, I strong, I passed the test. And I don't know how to provide this information to the person, how to provide just connected to him, but not pushing him, but moving him from the place. if I move someone, I can provide this information. But if I just touch, if the person being tested beginner, it's difficult to provide the information. It's a problem for me when I give the test. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying there. I was at a seminar in Maui, and it was Shinichi Sensei's first time here. And there was two students who came from New York City. And this was a seminar that Toy Sensei was supposed to attend, but he could not. So these students had come to see Toy Sensei and were like surprised when they got to Maui, and it was actually Shinichi Sensei teaching the seminar with Otsuka. And during the seminar, he was teaching key testing, and he was teaching just the standing posture. I think we had moved to Jokyu testing, so where you walk out in front and test the person. And of course, these two Aikikai individuals from New York City had never been exposed to key testing, and they, of course, just a tad competitive. Like, I don't buy this. This isn't going to work. You can't push me over. So they're really like bracing themselves, like they can't be pushed over, right? And Shinichi comes up and goes, "Wow." And he realized, oh, these guys have put their whole mind and body forward, and it would be senseless to try to push them backwards. But he instantly went to the back and pushed them forward, and they almost fell on their face. And he said, well, you see, you can put all your ki in one direction and not be moved. But 359 degrees, you are open and can be moved. The object of mind-body unification is to be immovable in all directions. And so I was watching this and I was like, oh yeah, I'll get it now. Okay. Yeah, because there are people that are so strong. And this goes back to a story that Fowler Sensei told me a long, long time ago. He was at a seminar, and it was one of the last seminars that Toy Sensei came to Maui, and he gave a bunch of key tests in Maui. And I think Prakash Makai was one of the people he gave a key test to. But there was a gentleman from Texas who was a really big, strong guy. And he's not only was he black belt in Aikido, he was also a black belt in karate. And he told Fowler Sensei he was really good friends with him, apparently. And I unfortunately don't remember this gentleman's name, but he told Fowler Sensei, he said, with my karate background and my Aikido background, no way anybody can move me, because I am completely immovable, because I have 2 black belts. And apparently Toy Sensei tested him and he fell backwards on his back almost. It's because he really was using muscle, and Toy Sensei just went, he just went right through it, and it was just priceless. And afterwards he went up to Fowler Sensei and said, yeah, that didn't work so well. I've got to really learn this Aikido stuff. Because, he was dependent on what he thought of his karate background, which is, they teach people to be rooted and really strong and put your ki into the ground type thing. And of course, that isn't what we teach in Aikido. So it was really a kind of a cross reference, and he really got confused by it. And I always find that humorous as well. But it was nothing like the story of seeing Shinichi Sensei push these poor folks from New York over, this way or that way. It was just priceless. But yeah, transmitting getting back to what you were talking about, Vitaly, is get strong people. Yeah, and you could be strong in one direction and not be moved. But think about, that's like, preparing to defend yourself only in one direction. And then somebody behind you hits you in the back of the head and knocks you unconscious. You want to be calm and aware of all your directions, not just be completely focused on not being moved in this direction. It'd be like putting all your force, all your money on black, not thinking about any of the other numbers in roulette or anything like that, and thinking you're going to win. You're not going to win. Maybe if it lands, so happens in that direction, you're okay. But there's 359 degrees that you're completely open. So I know a lot of beginners who are really strong depend on strength, and they want to pass a key test through physical strength. And there's nothing like the old just touch, wait for them to move, and then test. And then they go, wait, what happened? Because they're, I get the people where you just touch them, and they just almost jump out of their shoes sometimes because I'm going to pass that test. Because what do you want to do, Vitaly? You want to pass the test. No matter what, I'm going to pass the test because I want to look good. Who cares if I'm learning anything? I want to look good. I want to pass the test, and I want all that congratulations at the end, pats on the back. Oh wow, you did a great test. Wow, you're really good. That kind of thing. That's what they want, and you see that in people. And that's what's so good about key testing is you really have to let go of that and be completely open and welcoming and connecting with everyone. So yeah, I find that I could totally relate because I'm totally that way. Anyway, Kaomi, I know you don't practice Aikido so much, but
Hello, Sensei, and hello, everybody. I have a small, little experience, but Nalwai Sensei actually had me practice, and he was touching and testing me. And now I'm just reflecting from listening to everybody, and I remember his touch was just so soft, and now I'm understanding deeper why he was touching so soft. And I do have this mentality also. I want to pass the test because he was all explaining to me, and of course I don't want to waste his time, and I want to pass the test. And he used to mimic my face, and it was so scary. And then I guess he was telling me that I was just too serious. I want to pass the test. And he was, I think, teaching me in that sense. And I do have questions about connecting. And, when someone touches and you said you need to connect, what I think shaking hands is a good way. What is a feeling of this connecting thing? For example, like I can connect to probably animals better than to humans. Like, when I'm walking, someone is walking the dog, and then I can immediately feel, oh, I like this dog, I really like this puppy. And then I can see dog feels my liking and connection, and then we're just very connected. Is that the kind of feeling when you say someone touches and connect? So I want to know what kind of feeling is just connecting when you are having this key test. And the other one is, I think Fincher Sensei mentioned about the 1 point moves up. And I would like to know what it is like, what kind of feeling is just 1 point moves. Usually I totally forget. I don't even feel the point. I just totally somewhere else until later. When I calm down, I feel 1 point, but I don't feel anything moves up. It's gone from me. So I like to know too, what kind of feeling is connecting? What kind of feeling is moving?
What kind of feeling do you have when somebody gives you a compliment?
Happy.
Yeah, happy. Good, right? You have a good feeling. That's
Yes.
the kind of feeling you're looking for when you have it. You should be receiving a good feeling when you're receiving a key test. It should be a good feeling. It shouldn't be a bad feeling.
Okay.
It shouldn't be, an attacking type feeling. It should be comfortable. There's everybody has like the boundary I have with my daughter is very different than the boundary I have with somebody else. My daughter will come in my face and but it's always cool. I'm always good for that. I'm always, that is okay. So that kind of feeling when you have a boundary of key testing, like Lillian said, it's everybody's loving you in a sense. as, like when I key test Fincher, I have a lot of respect. My respect goes out to him, that kind of feeling I have. So that's a kind of feeling, a feeling of mutual respect, a feeling of friendship, a feeling, those good feelings you have is what we're looking for when we mean connection. And then for, one point coming up, have you ever been scared? Like, shocked? Your one point came up. Guaranteed. And you don't feel your one point, whether you're feeling it or not. There's no feeling in your one point. You can't say, I'm putting all my power in my one point. There's no feeling. It's not, and that's the thing. It's a state of mind. If you look at it, we say the one point in the lower abdomen, yes, but one point in the lower abdomen is also a mindset of complete opening, complete acceptance, complete connection. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's where I'm coming from there.
Thank you, Sensei.
Yeah,
It's
you're welcome.
helping me. Thank you.
Yeah. So with that being said, any other questions? Anybody else want to comment? Anything else? If not, I have a story which is very appropriate for key testing. So the students in the monastery, it was a Zen monastery, they were in total awe of this elder monk. Not because he was strict, but because nothing ever seemed to upset or ruffle him. So they found him a bit unearthly and even frightening. So one day they decided to put a test. They wanted to test him. So a bunch of them very quietly hid in a dark corner of one of the hallways and waited for the monk to walk by. And within moments, the old man appeared, and he was carrying a cup of hot tea. So just as he passed the students, they all rushed out at him, screaming as loud as they could. But the monk showed no reaction whatsoever. He peacefully made his way to a small table at the end of the hall. He gently placed down his cup and then, leaning against the wall, cried, "Oh!" That was his way of keeping one point. So, with that being said, have a good rest of your week. And if you can come to Wednesday's class, I'll be teaching this Wednesday. So, if not, I'll see you hopefully on Friday or Sunday. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. Thanks, and have a nice night or morning.